Welcome back to Project Phoenix 83, the show where we turn a non-running car into a race car. And in this episode, we actually fire it up for the first time. So in the last episode, we talked about buying the car. So the first thing I need to do is pick it up. Now, I'd never trailered a car before, so I decided to rent a U-Haul and see how it would go. Drove all the way up there, picked it up. It was on gravel, which is kind of the theme for this car. And pushed it, and it was getting stuck. And luckily, a couple of Bosnian guys happened to come by because we were blocking the road, and they helped me load it on and strap it down. So I was on my merry way. I had a spare engine in the back of the truck in the bed. And on the way home, I picked up an engine crane and engine stand. Got home and pushed the car off, and it actually almost hit a tree. So that was pretty scary for a second. I thought I'd just written off the car that I just bought, but luckily it kind of stopped. I took the trailer back, and then decided I had to get the engine out of the back of my truck. So very sketchy on grass with pieces of planks just like holding the wheels up. I managed to push it into my shed. So I got the engine on the engine stand, and it's in the shed. So once I got the car home, I decided I want to figure out what it is. I mean, I knew it was a Firebird, but I didn't really know anything else about it. All I saw was a picture. It looked like crap. It looked like something the guys on Roadkill would drive. And I wanted to, it had a V8, it ticked all the boxes. But I didn't really know anything about it. Probably should have done research ahead of time, but whatever. So I had a look inside. It's a 4-seat, like 2+2, front engine, rear-wheel drive. Exactly what I wanted. So I needed to figure out what I actually bought. So the Pontiac Firebird and the Chevrolet Camaro, they're two cars produced actually from the 60s all the way up to like the 2000s. They have different generations. So this is the third generation, and that ran from I think 1981 to 1989, I want to say. I'm sure someone will correct me if they care. And that's called the third generation, and everyone refers to it online as the third gen. So it is a third gen Firebird, and it shares a lot with the Camaro. So that's pretty cool. So what is it? It has a 305 small block Chevy, and they've been making those since like 1952 or something. All the way up until like 1997, where the LS engines kind of took over. They're still called a small block. And you still have big blocks, but it's the LS kind of range of engines. So we'll talk about that some other time. So this is what's kind of an early-ish small block. So it has a carburetor. Later in the Camaro and Firebird range, in the third gens, like 1985, 1986, they came out with TPI, which I think is throttle port injection, which is a form of electronic fuel injection. My one, being 1982, is quite early. I'm sorry, 1983, quite early. So it has a carburetor. The transmission is a 700R4. Again, General Motors automatic transmission. That is a 4-speed with overdrive, I believe. And horsepower of the engine is about 150 horsepower. Wow, that's terrible for a 5-liter V8. But this is the 1980s smog era, so they didn't know really how to combat that, so they ended up just suffocating the engines, basically. How much power can you get out of it? I mean, probably around 300 horsepower. I think 250 came on some of the later TPI engines, so... But then they also had the 350 TPI, so I don't know if those numbers are for that or the 305. But I've seen online people like Hot Rod Magazine, they can get, with a decent cam and set of heads, you can get about 300 horsepower out of it. So maybe I'll go down that route. Who knows? So we've got the V8 engine, the automatic transmission, and then we have what's called a GM 10-bolt. Rear end. So the rear end refers to the bits that the rear wheels attach to, and it has the axles in it and then a differential. 10-bolt refers to there are 10 bolts that hold the diff plate on, the cover plate. So that was how I identified it. I counted the bolts, and that's how a lot of people do it. So yeah, so it was a GM 10 bolt. Again, not really well renowned for being able to handle high horsepower. But you know, like I say, it's only got 150 horsepower right now, so it should be fine for what it, for what I need. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. So the first thing I was really excited to do was check the car over. So I had a look at the interior, kind of a mess, popped the hood, and it's missing a battery. Air conditioning had been removed, or the pump anyway, and everything else kind of looked like it was there. It wasn't too bad. So took the air cleaner off and was getting ready to put the battery in and crank it over. I saw there was an inspection sticker on the windshield, and it actually says 2016. So someone had kind of been driving it recently, I guess, hopefully. So with that in mind, I thought, yeah, the gas isn't stale. Probably it's probably not too old, so it should turn over. Sure enough, cranked it over, and as the guy said, it just backfired. So just kind of checking it over, checking the distributor and everything. Everything kind of looked okay, but it wasn't firing. So that was when I decided to check the firing order, and I'll show you an educational video. I just wanted to quickly go over firing order. This is a diagram of a small block Chevy. Piston number 1 at the front here on the driver's side. Firing order of a small block Chevy 18436-572, and that refers to the order in which the pistons need to fire to maintain the balance. So when I first got the car, one of the first things I needed to check when it wouldn't turn over and was backfiring is the firing order. I've made that mistake in the past where you're working on the engine, you take the spark plug leads off and don't put them back in the right order. So that's the thing I wanted to check. So any reference manual online anywhere has the firing order of a small block Chevy. It's really easy to get hold of. So piston number 1 right at the front here. So on the distributor cap, start at the point that's pointing towards number 1. It's not a physical line, it's just visually that's what it is. So you get your spark plug wire and you plug it one end into here and then the other end into the spark plug at the end there, and basically you just go around. So the next one would be number 8, so we grab a wire, plug it into number 8, and then 4, and then 3, just get all the way around the top. The rotor arm spins in a clockwise manner, so obviously it starts pointing here at number 1, and as the engine turns over it spins around, starts pointing that way. So that's the order that it spins, and basically you just keep going. Plug wire into 6, put it into 6, 5, 5, 7, 7, 2, where's 2? Over there. And then once all your wires are in, you're good. That's now your wires are wired in the correct sequence for it to fire in order. And if it doesn't fire now, you've got something. Fire it up. I think I've got the firing order in the right orientation now. Here we go. Nothing. So obviously it still didn't start, and obviously the firing order was correct, but maybe the timing was out. So the next thing I need to do is figure out how to set the timing on a small block Chevy, and here's another educational video. So I want to have a quick explanation of the timing of an engine. Now there's two types of, well, there's probably more than 2, but there's 2 major types of timing in an engine. The first is the relationship between all the internal components, the cam and the crankshaft. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about ignition timing. So the time at which the spark fires in relation to where the piston's traveling inside the engine. Why is that important? Well, a cycle engine has 4 phases to its combustion cycle. So little diagram down here. The first part of a combustion cycle for a 4-cycle engine is the piston moves downwards, and as it moves down, the inlet valve, the air valve is open, and air and petrol, gasoline rushes in and fills this area. So then that piston moves all the way down to the bottom, and that's the first phase. This is now full of gas and air. The second stage is this valve then closes, and the piston moves up. It squashes everything in there, and when it gets to the very top, well, just before the very top, the spark plug fires and ignites everything. So that's the second phase. That force of the explosion pushes that piston down. And that is where the power comes from in the 4-cycle engine. So that's pushed it down. Now, once it's at the bottom, another piston fires, and like if you can imagine a seesaw, it pushes this piston back up. This valve opens, and all of this crap goes out of the exhaust pipe, and the piston returns to the top. So that's the 4 cycles of a 4-cycle engine. Now, the piston was at the top twice during that cycle, and it only needed to spark once, and that's what timing is. So this is our engine. With my engine, I'd got the leads in the correct order, which was the firing order, which we talked about earlier. So the next problem was to make sure that the timing was correct. So in order to get the way you do it, you get number 1 piston, which is in the diagram previously, the one at the closest on the driver's side. You get that to what's called top dead center, which is the apex of its movement, the very top of its movement. Now, to do that, obviously you can't see inside the engine normally. So there's a few little things you can do. There's a tool that you can get which replaces the spark plug, and it has a moving point in it. And as you rotate the engine, I rotate it by hand. I put a wrench on the end of the crank and just turn it. And as I turn it, it pushes the pistons up, kind of like the starter would do on a starter motor. So as it comes up, you can read off the marks up here, and one of them will say top dead center, and that's where you know that you're at top dead center. I didn't have one of those, but luckily I'm a massive nerd. So what I did is I took the spark plug out and I got a borescope. Now, a borescope is just a camera that has a flexible lens on it, and you can put that down this hole, and then inside I could see the piston. And as I rotated the crank, the piston moved up, and I could see it right at the top just before it went back down again. So that was my incredibly nerdy way of finding top dead center. Now, what I forgot to do was check the valves. So my mistake was that I was actually at the top of the exhaust stroke, as we just talked about. So, but what does that mean? So once I was at the top of the exhaust stroke, the exhaust valve was open, so all of the stuff in it technically should have already been burnt. So I pulled off the distributor cap, and the rotor arm was inside, and I pointed it at the number 1 cylinder. So you just turn it and just rotate it inside there. It actually has a bit of a rotation. As you're pushing it down, it rotates in the cam gears. So you want to kind of set it a little bit before, so that it actually falls in place. You'll feel it when you do it. Anyway, so I did that, but what happened was I was at the top of the exhaust stroke. So when the piston came up and this got to here, it sent electricity through the spark plug and ignited the burnt gas, and basically ignited all of the gas and just spat flames and stuff out of the exhaust, backfiring. You'll hear it, like a bang, 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 bang. Sounds awful. If you're lucky, it doesn't make any noise and you're just doing nothing, but sometimes it can bang really badly. So that's what happened. It didn't start, and that's what you just saw in the last video, was it not starting. So what did I do? Okay, so then I got back to top dead center again using the camera, and when I pulled the distributor cap off again, I noticed that the rotor arm was pointed the exact opposite direction. That
That's called being 180 degrees out on your timing. So what did I do? I just picked up the distributor again, pointed the rotor arm at number 1, put it all back together, and we were good. Now, when I first got the car, the first time I tried to set the timing originally, it was actually pointed at like number 4 cylinder, so it was way out. It wasn't even 180 degrees out, it was just out. So, simple fix really. I mean, I'll show you in the next video. It actually started up perfectly fine after that, but that's how you you set timing with number 1 cylinder. Some people just put their finger over the spark plug hole. If you've got, and you can crank it over and you'll feel it push the air off. Now, the fact that it's pushing the air off, pushing air out, normally means that it's coming up. So you can then look at the rocker arms. Now that was the mistake I made. I didn't take the valve cover off and look at the rocker arms, which is what I should have done, and it would have meant that I got it right the first time, but I didn't, and that was a mistake, and anyone can make that mistake. So if you do, just get it back to top dead center again, and if you're still pointing at number 1 cylinder, you know that it's wrong, so you want to rotate the engine all the way around again, so the piston goes down, and then back up, and then you'll find that it's pointing 180 degrees out. Take the distributor out, point it back at number 1, and you're good to go. Okay, I think I've got the distributor in the right position this time.
Yay, it fired. Fantastic. So I've now turned a non-running pile into a running pile. So once I fired it up for the first time, it was pretty loud. It was just open headers. I didn't even check when I fired it up for the first time, but you can tell it was pretty loud. So I had a look underneath, and sure enough, there was like no exhaust systems. So I needed to build an exhaust system. So the first thing I did is I went quickly to the auto parts store and picked up some flexi sections and some mufflers, and I just wanted to, and some downturns, and I just wanted to like mock something up to see what was going on. Unfortunately, the driver's side header had this like weird flange thing, like a sort of reducer to like a 2-inch pipe, kind of welded on like terribly, and it was all kinked, and it was pushing right into the frame rail. So, well, not frame rails, the unibody, but into like part of the frame. And I had no idea what was going on there, and no idea how anyone could have possibly had an exhaust on there at any point. So that kind of like scuppered my plans a little bit. I mean, I got the flexi section on there, and you can see I fired it up again, and it. It was pretty good. I left it running for a little bit longer, quietened it down a lot, but that wasn't going to cut it. So I ended up going online and checking out, bought some new headers, and you can see like what the new ones look compared to the old ones. It's so much better. And got some collectors, and I got like a Doug's Y pipe. So the Camaro and Pontiac Firebirds, they have the manifolds come out, and then they merge together and then run down the passenger side. So that's what I ended up doing. And then I used some of that flexi section and some of the downturns and one of the mufflers and just strapped it under there just to lift it up. So now that I could, start the engine without my ears bleeding, I was able to actually drive it. So that, yeah, I kind of kept having to, run it a little bit because the timing's still not 100% perfect. It's not advanced enough or whatever. So I ended up just like revving it, kept revving it, threw it into gear. Yes, it turned. I didn't even know that it had a drive shaft or anything, so that was great news. And I drove it up to my parking space, and it almost didn't stop. Luckily, I was able to just like coast it in there. Threw it back into park, got out, and just listened to it. So that was fantastic. So I turned it from a non-running kind of absolute pile of a car into a running pile of a car. one complete. So that was fantastic. So already I found out I need an exhaust system. I need brakes. I mean, I don't know what was wrong with those. They could have just been from sitting. No idea. Have to figure that out. Yeah, so anyway, so I decided to kind of like go through the car a little bit, and he had like some oil, you know, normal stuff, steering wheel cover, speaker boxes, kind of that kind of crap in the back of the car. But I also found a receipt for some stop leak. So, why would someone have a receipt for stop leak? Guessing the radiator leaks. So that is also added onto my list of things. Let me know in the comments what you think of my little educational section. Like I said in the previous video, I'm not a mechanic, so I'm just kind of going off of what I've read online and what actually worked for me. You know, the theory was there, I followed the theory, and it worked. So that's why I wanted to share it with you, just in case you picked up an absolute pile of crap and wanted to get it running and this helped you. That'd be fantastic.
So what does the car cost me so far? Well, the car cost $1,100. That doesn't include the $300 for the extra engine. First thing I needed to buy was a battery. I bought a RedTop Optima for $230. Very expensive battery, but I think it's worth it. The exhaust components was around $500, and miscellaneous around $50. I also bought some tools, but I'm not including those in the total spend because obviously I'm going to be able to reuse those later. So the car currently owes me $1,880. What's it worth? Probably nothing. So let's see how we go from here.
Thank you for watching. Cheerio! Bye!